hello, everybody, and welcome to the Clever Girl Finance weekly live stream. I know it's obvious. I am not Bola, but I'm excited to let you know that I will be interviewing Bola today. We're going to be talking about her seventh book, her next bestseller, Clever Girl Millionaire. And if you have not grabbed your copy of the book, if you've not pre-ordered it yet, you need to go now to where books are sold to grab your copy. So make sure you go to clevergirlfinance.com/books to get your copy. So I'm excited. If you don't know, I am Fo. I'm the founder of Mama and Money and a very good friend of Bola. And I wanted the opportunity for her to talk about her book and to share the inspiration behind it, and for you to get a behind the scenes look at her thought process and why she wanted to bring this book to you guys. So I'm excited to welcome your favorite person, the founder of Clever Girl Finance, the author of the best-selling book, Clever Girl Millionaire, Bola Sokunbi. Welcome her to the stage. Bola, I'm so excited to have you.
That was a great intro. Thank you so much, Fo, for coming on here to interview me. This is very exciting.
You're welcome. I know it's so different being on the other side of the interview table on your own platform,
I
but
know.
I'm excited. I'm
I
excited
want to
to talk
introduce you
about
now.
it. So excited to talk about this book. This is book number 7. I'm calling it number 7. What was your inspiration for writing yet another book to help the people in your audience, in your community? You've given them so much already, but what inspired you to write Clever Girl Millionaire after giving them so much information in your previous books?
Yeah, so book number 7, because I updated and expanded my first book. So I'm really a 7-time published author with 2 of the same book. but, but to answer your question, I feel like Clever Girl Millionaire was just a natural progression from all of my other books. So the first set of books really set the foundation. So the very first book talks about foundational finance, right? What you need to know if you're getting started, all of the basics. The second book goes into investing, which is like next level. Now you know your basics. Now you want to think about how do I grow my money now that I'm organized. The third book was about side hustles, expanding, building wealth, creating additional streams of income. My fourth book was my personal story to building Clever Finance and my journey navigating just my upbringing, my career, building a business, why I chose to do this business, challenges I faced, prejudices I faced as a woman of color. And then the next book after that was a workbook, which kind of basically gathered everything from those 4 books and allows the reader or the user to create their own plan based on all the strategies in those 4 books. I'm missing a book somewhere. But then now we have Clever Girl Millionaire, which leans into my journey of becoming a millionaire and the strategies I took to go from just saving, right? Planning my finances to save, to now giving the reader the idea to pursue beyond saving, now planning for freedom and planning for real wealth.
So I had the opportunity, obviously, as you know, to get the advanced reader's copy. And I'm going to tell you guys, this is definitely a book that you need to grab because it really lays out step by step how to build that $1 million net worth, how to reach that financial goal if that's a goal that you have for your finances. And I like to say building wealth, it may not be easy, but it's definitely simple. And I love how simple Bola makes the steps. It's literally step 1, step 2, step 3. Anyone can follow these steps to be successful. And one of the stories that really stood out to me was you shared the story about your dad, where he was the first in his family to be formally educated. Much later on in life, he went on to get PhDs and be successful in his career, and then be able to, financially help and support his family. And it reminded me so much of my own story of my great grandfather, where he was in, the South, deep South, very segregated in his time. He owned land, was one of the big landowners in our area. He paid that land off, became debt free, very similar to my story. He paid off that land. He was the first Black man to own a vehicle in that area. And so I remember my grandmother telling me the story about her dad, and it just gave me no excuse, right? We are building on legacies of people who had much harder, upbringings that we had, much more difficult situations that we have, that allow us to be able to stand on their shoulders to build wealth. But you've worked with hundreds of thousands of women within your community. So what is the excuse that you're hearing from women, maybe even men in our generation, as far as building wealth, when we clearly see that, hey, there are people who've done it with way less than us.
Hmm. You know, yes, and like you said, our parents come from places, or our grandparents come from places and backgrounds where things are so much more difficult, right? My dad didn't start the first grade until he was 13 years old because there was no money for him to go to school. And my dad's twin sister is not formally educated, which means that she doesn't read or write, because when they were prioritizing who was going to school, they prioritized the male child who they felt was going to make better use of the education. If my grandfather was still alive, I'd love to have a conversation with him about that. Um, but yeah, so my dad would, you know, while he was not going to school until age 13, my dad was on the farm making money, helping his family make money. And so fast forward now to your point, to this current generation, and what is the excuse I see most often? I wouldn't say that's an excuse. I would say it's this expectation. And it's this expectation driven by what we are exposed to on social media, by celebrities, by influencers, and even now becoming normal to society, that we should have achieved certain things very quickly. You know, not just finances, but you know, when you should have your kids, when you should get married, when you should get that college degree, how much you should have in your bank account, when you should own your first house. There are all these expectations and standards that we're seeing placed upon us by society and social media, that we're now taking them upon ourselves. And we're saying, oh, well, if I haven't made my first $1 million by age 30, then what's the point? And not only that, because of the way the expectations are set and what we're seeing on social, we're expecting these things to happen very quickly. I made $1 million in 6 months. I became a billionaire in 1 year. Like nobody's posting the struggle on their social media accounts. Nobody's really vocalizing the pain that they had to navigate to achieve this goal. They're just posting the goal. And as a result, posting their achievement of the goal. And as a result, we just assume, yeah, it should be easy, it should be quick, it should be fast. And if it doesn't happen that way, then it's not meant to be for me. It's for other people.
Yeah. So I think I got a valuable lesson from a pastor years ago, and he said something to the effect of, the people that you see are outliers. So the person who made $1 million in 6 months, that person is an outlier, but those are always the people that we think is normal, and it's not. So with that being said, though, with these, unrealistic expectations that we see on social media, a lot of women are probably disqualifying themselves. Well, I don't make enough, or I don't have that job, or I'm not in this area. What would you say to the woman who is mentally, in her mindset, has already disqualified herself from this journey of being able to build wealth and ultimately become a millionaire?
I think it's important to really get clear on who you are and understand what your power is, and also extend yourself grace, right? The only person you're in competition with is yourself, and the next version of yourself, not anybody else. So you're doing yourself a disservice by disqualifying yourself from success or building wealth based on what you see other people doing outside of your realm, whether it's friends, whether it's celebrities, whether it's influencers. They have nothing to do with what you can achieve and the success that you can attain. So it's really important to get clear on, why do I want this for myself? What is this going to mean for me and my family? Just because you see somebody achieving something doesn't mean that you should want that same thing. You have to get clear on your why. You have to get clear on who you are. And again, tap into your power. Yes, I may not have accomplished this by age 30, by age 40, by age 45, but I'm on my own unique timeline, is what we have to remind ourselves. And as long as I am intentional and I'm consistent, I take the steps and I apply the strategies which I outline in my book, then I too can achieve these things. And it's important to keep in mind that when it comes to building real wealth, for most people, for 99.9% of wealthy people, it is not glamorous. It is not fancy. In fact, it is very boring, and it's happening in the background of life, because life goes on, right? But it's setting the intention, implementing the steps, building the consistency, and making sure the things you're supposed to be doing to build wealth are happening while you are living life, while life is going on, because it's not exciting. We look on social media, we look at what the world is presenting to us, and we think it should be this exciting experience of building wealth, and fame and status and all these things come with it. And that's really not the truth. And sometimes I think that's part of the disqualifier, because people see all these other factors and you're like, well, I don't want that. I don't want the fame. I don't want to be on social media. I mean, I don't, they don't want these things. And they're like, you know what, this entire lifestyle is not for me. But money doesn't care who you are. It doesn't care what you look like. It doesn't care where you live. It just cares. The reason why money is going to stay with you and grow with you is if you treat it well. That's all it cares about.
So
So
I love how you say it's
go ahead.
boring. It absolutely is boring. And I love the phrase. I don't know if you've heard it recently, like quiet millionaires.
Yeah.
And I did a video on this talking about like quiet millionaires is your everyday people. We oftentimes think, or a lot of times we see on social media, you got to be a digital marketer, you got to be this flashy entrepreneur to build wealth. And it's like, no, it's the electrician who owns a business and who's able to make, several $100,000 a year and put some of that into investments. Is the teacher who's able to manage well. It's everyday people that we just don't get the opportunity to see. So yeah, wealth building is definitely boring and not the flashy stuff that we always see on social media. So I agree, like you can't disqualify yourself. And one of the things I guess we should touch on as well is as they're disqualifying themselves, they also may be in environments where people are not pursuing well. Their environment may be an environment where people have disqualified themselves and they think, well, this is just our lot in life. This is just our family. This is just the community we grew up in. And one of the things that you talk about in the beginning of the book is mindset and having to overcome those negative Nancy's and people who had negative things to say about your pursuits. So can you talk to those people who find themselves in environments where wealth is not talked about and where wealth, sometimes is frowned upon as if it's evil?
hmm I think that's a really great question, and it's something that I do talk about in the book. And I had a conversation with somebody about this recently. And when you're in a space where nobody has achieved that thing, it's hard for you to visualize it for yourself. And I've been in that space because growing up, despite my parents' educational accolades and their career accolades, we were not rich because my parents were the first generation to go to grade school, high school, college. And because of that, they came out bearing I don't want to call it a burden, but the obligation of carrying their extended family. And just wasn't just one or two members of their extended family, it was brothers, sisters, cousins, and their children. Even to this day, my family still supports our extended family because my parents were the first. And so that is where a lot of their money went. Once our household was secure, it was now then making sure our other family households were secure because in our culture where I come from, you if you are successful, you bring people along with you, right? Um it's they look at you as unsuccessful if you have all the success but nobody can share it with you. That's kind of like the idea. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's really important that we start thinking about building wealth as opportunity, right? It gives you opportunity. My parents, although they were not rich, them being able to have access to that education and get good careers and get middle class incomes gave them the opportunity to support others, right? So money in itself is not evil, right? Money just amplifies who you are. If you are a wicked person, money helps you be more wicked. If you're
Right.
a generous person, money helps you be more generous. Money is not evil. It is simply a tool. And again, going back to what I was saying, that if you are in a space where you not grow up seeing money, it's hard to visualize yourself in that space, but you know what wealth is. And so changing your mindset around that, especially if you're in that space where nobody is wealthy around you or pursuing financial goals or they all think money is evil, is really, again, getting clear on your intention. What do you want this tool, money, to do for you? How do you want it to elevate your goals, your ambitions, the impact you want to have, the legacy you want to create, right? People are always quick to attack wealthy people or quick to attack who they call nepo babies or trust fund babies. But again, money only amplifies the worst and the best of who those people already are. Everybody loves an Oprah because she's generous. Everybody hates XYZ billionaire because they seem mean and wicked. It's not the money, it's who they are. And if I had the opportunity to be a nepo baby or a trust fund baby, listen, I'm not giving the money back because you don't like it. What having money does for you is it gives you options. It lets you walk away from situations that don't serve you. It gives you freedom and it lets you create impact, not just in your family's life, but in the lives of people around you, in your community. And that's when real change happens because you can leverage what you have built to drive change for things you don't like and things that don't serve you. So why wouldn't you want to have money? Why would you hate on this tool that can be a game changer in your life? The mindset people need to have is, how can I acquire this for myself so I can drive change, so I can drive a mission that I'm passionate about, and so that I can live a good life and create my own trust fund babies, especially as women and people of color.
So you touch on something that I think we should kind of, it was a small thing that you mentioned, but we should definitely talk about it as women of color, as Black women, that oftentimes we have the obligation if we quote unquote make it, to then take care of our family members, that some other cultures may not have that responsibility. So I think a lot of times when it comes to people of color, that's that small thing that we don't talk about, is like we have to become wealthy, because a lot of times it's not just us, it's taking care of the parents, it's taking care of the extended family who may not have had the opportunity to do what we're doing, but who helped us along the way. So that's something that is also kind of nuanced as well, that I think we should always think about is, while people are saying wealth is evil and all these things, we almost a lot of times have the obligation to build wealth so that we can move our families forward. Would you agree with that?
I absolutely agree. I mean, I have relatives that my parents paid for their high school and college education, and they are incredibly successful and they are forever grateful, and now they can change the trajectory of their own generations because of what my parents did. So yes, people look at it as a burden when money is tight and it's difficult, especially I guess at our age where we're considered the sandwich generation. We have the older family members that we may be obligated to, and then we have our children, the younger generation that we're taking care of. And so it's hard, especially if you are in a space where you're still trying to figure out your own finances, you're still trying to navigate life, but then you're being pulled in these two different directions to support aging parents and to support kids. But again, it's really getting clear on what is my why, getting your finances in order for yourself, having good communication about what you can afford to do, right? And then navigating from there. In my upbringing, when there was absolutely no money to spare and my parents didn't have anything to give that paycheck, it was like, listen, I can't give you the money now. Maybe I can give it to you in a few months, but come over, you have a place to stay. Come over, you're always going to have a warm meal. So they did what they could when they could until they could do more, right? There were times where somebody came and said, I thought I could pay my daughter's tuition, but I can't. And my parents had to take that on permanently. And so they did that when they could. And when they couldn't, we can give you half. We can give you a quarter. She can come and stay with us and it'll be easier for her to go to school from here. How can you make it work in a way that doesn't overwhelm you? And sometimes it does get overwhelming. Like I've seen my mom sacrifice things for herself to support her sister's kids, right? But that's something that she did out of the goodness of her own heart and out of her own choice. But you have to figure out a way that it works for you without burning you out.
Yeah, so definitely a nuanced discussion that comes with building wealth within our communities. But you touched on this where you were saying that your parents were helping fund education, but that was actually a milestone for you as well that you talk about in the book, being able to give back to a few students to be able to go through school. So, how is giving also a part of this wealth plan of your journey to becoming a millionaire?
Yeah, so I'll share that story and I'll share why I share that story in the book. So people think that in order to give and build legacy and have impact, you have to be wealthy, and that's not the case. So I mentioned that my dad started the first grade when he was 13 years old because he came from a background of poverty. The money was not there for him to go. And so as I saw the sacrifices my parents made for me and my siblings migrating to a new country, downgrading careers, my mom having to work as a nanny, sacrificing so much for me to go to college because I was an international student at the time. I couldn't get student loans. Seeing all of that, I understood what sacrifice meant, right? And the sacrifice my parents made gave me the opportunity to be here, to be this person or that person I was at the time. And for my dad, education was a choice because my dad's younger brother chose to start but not finish. He dropped out of high school and their life trajectories were very, very, very different, right? So my dad could have said, you know what, I just want to stay on the farm. I don't like school. And his parents would have been happy because you know what, that saves us money, go work on the farm. Um, but going back to the point, my dad comes with this background of poverty. And so I decided to start a scholarship fund in his hometown called the Bright One Educational Fund. Because I know that, going there as a child, growing up, going to visit my grandmother, I knew that there were many other kids just exactly like my dad who were just on the farm, hanging around because there was no money to send them to school. So I was like, if I can sponsor one child to go to grade school and high school, that is going to change this child's life. And so I let my family members know, I let friends know, and with people banding together, friends who worked at publishers, donating books, people donating money, we were able to send 12 children through high school over the period of time that I had that scholarship fund. And that in itself changed the trajectory of those children's lives because otherwise they would not have had that opportunity. And I did all of that while I was still working my first job, making $54,000 before taxes. I wasn't wealthy, but I had the intention that I wanted to give back and to create impact. And so giving doesn't require you to be wealthy. It requires you to have intention and to start thinking about what impact do I want to have? What legacy do I want to create? And over time, as you do that, you're able to, as you bring in more money, as you earn more, as your portfolio grows, as your wealth grows, you're able to do that at a larger scale and have stronger impact. So for me, giving is very important in whatever way that it makes sense for you, right? And I'm not just talking about, oh, I pay my tithes to church and then I walk away and that's it. But I'm talking about thinking about, okay, what impact can I have with this resource, with this tool I have been blessed with, right? And at $54,000 before taxes in New York City, you may not think that is a blessing, but it is more than I had ever earned before. And, like coming from where I come from, I felt like I was wealthy in that time. And so I wanted to give back.
So I think it comes back to the conversation of what's your why, and realizing that, there's a reason for wealth and you can use it for good or you cannot. And I think if you're listening to this, if you're watching this, if you're interested in getting the book, you probably have good intentions. You want to build wealth, not just for yourself and for selfish reasons, but to give back to the communities that essentially raised you. Now, let's switch gears a little bit and talk about some of the financial mistakes that you made. So you're sharing some that I like gasped at when I read them, including the whole 401k fiasco. You even talked about the wedding expenses, and I can attest to that. Coming up on my 10-year anniversary, I'm like, boy, could we have saved some money going in. So talk about those mistakes that you made and how they really reshape your view on money and going forward building wealth.
Yeah. So the 401k, and I have a video on the 401k mistake that's going to come up. But basically, I had worked several years at my job and I was moving to a new company and I wanted to roll over my 401k. But I asked them to mail me a check and I took that check and put it into my bank account. And I never sent the money to the rollover within that 60-day window. And so what happens when you do that? You get hit with taxes, income tax, and then that 10% penalty. So I literally lost like 40 to 45% of my 401k. And it was unbelievable because it wasn't until I filed my taxes that I realized what had happened. I'm like, why do I owe all these thousands of dollars to the IRS? It's because, girl, you cashed out your 401k check. So that was ignorance and a bit of irresponsibility. Irresponsibility because I should have sent that check into the new IRA within that 60-day window. In fact, I should have just told them to do a direct rollover. And two, like, I just didn't know. At that time, I wasn't a financial expert. I was working class. I was still figuring out my finances, learning how to save, budget, invest. I didn't know. So it was ignorant, right? Ignorance. And this is where knowledge becomes power. Now, my wedding was, I knew.
Willingly.
It was not that it was willingly, it was just something that couldn't be avoided, right? African families are very big. I'm my dad's only daughter. This was his life's dream, to invite all these people. And then I had grand ideas of where I wanted my wedding to be. You have to read the book to get the details, but it was incredibly expensive. And the aftermath, my husband and I were eating rice and beans. We went on honeymoon and couldn't buy anything because we funded that wedding in cash, no debts. Our families helped us, but we paid for most of it because of what we wanted to have. And we come out of it and I'm like, I'm glad we're debt free, but we have no money.
You got pictures though. You have very nice pictures, I'm sure.
And videos, and we got pictures of Not Magazine and some other magazine.
It was a memory. You paid for an expensive memory
over there. Yes. And so I was like, you know what we could have done with this money? Well, the thing I learned from those two stories, the intentional wedding mistake and the 401k unintentional mistake, was that those two mistakes allowed me to challenge myself on what I could do, which was recover and rebuild. And I came out of both of those situations just upset. And my anger fueled motivation to work harder, pursue my side hustles, max out my 401k, start stockpiling money in my bank account. And that is what I did. Now, for many people, when they make mistakes, they get angry. There's shame, there's embarrassment, there's all these emotions that come with it, especially if you allow other people to come into play and they start telling you, wow, look at that wedding you had. Wow. you cash out your 401k. People are always going to do that kind of stuff. But some people just allow those emotions and they channel that anger into depression and woe is me. I'm meant to feel I cannot be successful. I cannot do this. And so I challenge people to think about it differently. Yes, you have made mistakes. We're all going to make mistakes. You look at the wealthy people in the world who share their background. Some of them have made incredibly expensive $1 million mistakes and they recovered because they set the intention that this has happened. I have learned my lesson here. I'm going to take this away, right? And I'm going to do this differently. And so that's what I did. I challenged my anger and my emotions to rebuild. And I did it in a way that, thinking back, I was a little crazy because I'm like, I spent all this money on this wedding. I need this money back now. What am I going to do now? Because I need to recover it now, right? I had a second wedding dress. I sold that. I sold most of our little wedding knickknacks. I kept my main dress because it's sentimental. But there were so many things that, like I turned into something else and started to bring money back in. And eventually recovered the cost, and it was no big deal. But I learned from my mistakes is basically the bottom line.
So I love that the narrative didn't become I'm not good at money. And so I think a lot of times when people make financial mistakes, to your point, they go into this mindset, they're upset with themselves, they're angry, they're ashamed, and then they have this narrative and this mindset that I'm not good with money. When, to your point, we've all made financial mistakes. We've all done stuff. Like, we spent a lot of money in our wedding too. And if I think back, I'm like, I don't talk to half these people. Would have not invited them.
I don't know you. I don't like you. I did not invite you.
Oh, waste the money.
My plate per head.
Right. So I think we've all made those financial mistakes. And the important part is not thinking that, oh, I'm not good with money and I'll never be good with money. It's learning from those mistakes. And now you have wisdom. You have a notch of wisdom on your belt so that as you are continuing to build wealth, you just know better. And I think sometimes we have to have those expensive lessons. Now, speaking of weddings, obviously, you're now married at this point and you're joining finances with your husband. And you talk very candidly about this in the book. So definitely go grab it if y'all want tea. But, you talk about this, the combining finances with your husband. And I know for a lot of, I can't say this is true for me, but for a lot of women, they are taught, early on, you need to have your own separate secret account just in case. And you need to, separate finances, but that's not necessarily the approach that you guys took. So can you talk about what it actually looks like to have manage finances in a partnership such that you can be successful as a family unit?
Yeah, and the secret account is something that's very common with women, but if you really pause to think about it, those accounts are oftentimes tied to women who need to get out of terrible situations, right? You need to figure out how to keep you and your kids safe, and this account is that account that is going to create the opportunity for you to exit a bad situation. But for my husband and I, obviously, with every relationship, there were challenges about money and navigating finances together as a couple because we're raised very differently. We have, different approaches. I'm very panic and fear when it comes to money. Like, my biggest fear is not having any money because part of my story is growing up, I would see my mom's friends come to our house with suitcases and kids, and they had nowhere to go because they had no money. Their husband was either beating them or abusive or pushed them out or abusive to the kids, and our house was the only option. And the reason for that was because they had no money. So growing up seeing that, I just never wanted to be in a space where I didn't have an option. Whereas my husband is very low key, more confident in, do you know how much money I'm going to make? I'm going to be able to recover that. But I'm like, I need it in my account now. That's the recovery from the wedding, right? So, we have what I like to call a hybrid approach to our finances. We have both joint and separate accounts. Joint accounts for joint goals, joint expenses, and separate accounts for things that we're doing for ourselves. Like, I don't want to get to a point where I have to explain, oh, I'm going to do my hair on Saturday. Can I spend $125? Or, oh, I want to go get my nails done. Can I spend $50? Like, I feel like in our relationship, we're so far beyond that. And that just wasn't conversations we wanted to have at the beginning. Early on in our marriage, we had a rule that if we were going to spend more than $500, whether in the joint account or separate accounts, we would talk about it. Now, as our finances have evolved, our relationship has evolved, we don't have those conversations anymore, but we do know when we have a big financial goal we're pursuing that we're going to have a conversation about the money, right? For example, taxes. Uh,
That's going to be part 2 of this book. Once you become a millionaire, taxes and how to navigate that.
But the accountant says it's a good problem to have. So I'm leaning on her words of wisdom.
It is. I mean, which one do you prefer?
So it's really just coming to a point where it works for you, finding a money setup and arrangement that works for you, and communication. Separate accounts do not mean secret accounts. It does not mean financial infidelity. You need to communicate about what is the intent and purpose of having the accounts. And I did explain the point where it makes sense for a secret account is when you need to exit a devastating situation, trauma, abuse, that kind of stuff, right? You have to secure yourself. And so people tend to confuse, especially in, the Christian background. Oh, you have a separate account. That's not Christian of you. No, me and my husband are the ones in this relationship, right? It's me. If we can agree on this, then that's what makes our relationship work. There are people who have joint accounts for everything, and you still cannot make your relationship work. It's not the account that makes your marriage work, right? Honesty, communication, I think that's very important for every couple to understand. So come up with a structure that works for both of you. Transparency, communication, and then consistency and keeping up with that communication. So me and my husband, we have conversations about money very often. And the way you talk to your partner about money depends on how you guys best communicate. I had to learn very quickly that, my husband would come home from work. He's a physician. And as soon as he came home, I'm like, oh, this bill, this investment, this bill, this investment. And I realized that he didn't want to come home from stress to stress. So I can talk about money anytime. I can switch mid-sentence in the middle of a movie, in the middle of dinner to talk about money and investing. Okay. But he is not like that. He's like easier on the weekend to talk about it, or, before he goes to work. It's the same way with me with what I do for work. I teach about money. I don't want to be home in the evening and talk about, oh, how many people learn about budgeting today. It's just, so you have to find your love language, your communication style, and your communication timing.
Yeah, I love that. And one of my favorite parts of the book that I told you about, where he's like, he doesn't eye you about your handbags, and you don't side eye him about the sneakers. I was like, I definitely side eye my husband about his sneakers, but
I mean, I still side eye, but he doesn't have to explain why he spent the money because we already have that agreement. So when I go buy my bag, just say it's a nice bag. That's all I want to hear from you.
Listen, I just purchased one today, so I get it. I completely get it. So look, I want to transition a little bit before we kind of wrap this up, but I want to talk to the woman who's like, okay, I want to implement what you're saying. You talk about the pillars of wealth within the book, and a lot of times we're being inundated with, you got to have 7 streams of income if you want to be rich, and you simplify that so much. And make it so lean for people. So can you, at a high level, kind of talk about those pillars and what people can do to start building their way towards wealth that's not overwhelming and it's not this super hustle culture?
Yeah. So in the book, I talk about 4 pillars of prosperity. So when I was thinking about writing the book, I was like, what has helped me get to this place? How did I organize my finances in a way that made sense for me? So I lean into what I call the 4 pillars of prosperity. Number 1 is earned income. This is you exchanging your time for money, right? In order to build wealth, you need to have a foundation, and your earned income is the foundation, whether it's your primary job or a business where you exchange your time for money. This is what you bring in income with, and then you can now assign this income different things, right? The second pillar is investing, because once you have your earned income, now you have to give your money a job to do, which is to go to work and grow for you, right? So foundationally, those 2 pillars are enough to build wealth, right? I leaned heavily into those 2 pillars, especially earlier on. Now, the third pillar is real estate. And this is only if this is something that interests you or an avenue you want to pursue to build wealth, right? And this is not just buying your first home. This is investing for passive income, not just appreciation, right? So this could be things like buying rental property, investing in commercial property, investing in farmland, investing in REITs as a way to create passive income, to add on to your wealth building portfolio. And I also talk about my mistakes in that real estate section by way of my tenant from hell. My nightmare tenant.
Get the book if you want to know what to avoid with real estate.
I thought I was a landlady. And then
Not
the fourth pillar is entrepreneurship, side hustles, right? So this is basically you pulling in money from side hustles, starting a company, doing different things to bring in additional streams of
mhm,
income. Now, each of these pillars, you can take them and combine them with earned income being your foundation. You can have earned income and lean into entrepreneurship. You can have earned income and lean into investing and entrepreneurship. You can have earned income and lean into real estate and entrepreneurship. You combine these pillars on top of that foundational earned income in a way that you feel fits your lifestyle, and you use that as your formula to build wealth. And over time, you can shift and mix and match and restack and reorganize these pillars, but you structure them in a way that works for you. And within each of those pillars, once you have that system, okay, I'm going to bring in money, I'm going to invest, I'm going to buy a property, I'm going to bring in side hustle income, you will find different streams and avenues within each of them to continue to expand your wealth building portfolio. But the foundation is creating a system that works for you, starting with that foundational pillar of earned income and then adding on the investing and the stock market pillar, because that's just very low barrier to entry and pretty much anyone can do that. And so that's how I have built wealth. That's what we do in my house that I share in the book. And that really is the anchor for the book Clever Girl Millionaire. This is what I have done, simplified, because you said at the beginning, building wealth is simple, right? What makes it difficult is life happening, life getting in the way, situations, mistakes, traumas, incidents, losses. These are all the things that complicate those simple steps of saving, budgeting, investing, paying off debt. And so once you can structure your pillars, you kind of have something to lean on when you're not sure what to do.
yeah, I love it. And that was probably one of my favorite sections because you made it so clear. Earn income. So for all the, internet gurus who are telling you quit your 9 to 5, like this is a way that you can build wealth. It's the foundation. But then leaning into perhaps entrepreneurship, real estate investing, and all the different the things that you mentioned in those four pillars, like the it's so simple. It's simple, but again, to your point, life can make it not easy, but it's very straightforward. So you, by getting this book, will have the blueprint and the roadmap to building wealth, to becoming a millionaire, all things that I can literally co-sign and attest to. Bola shares in this book. So Bola, if you think back to where you were as you were on this journey, like building wealth, what is the one thing or something that you feel like would have saved you years of struggle that you want to share with the viewers here?
So I would say, just given my personality, I would tell myself to calm down, and I would tell myself not to be so afraid. Right. So I talk about one of the things that causes me fear around money is the fear of not having any. And then I talked about my anxiety of when I didn't have any money after I spent all my money on my wedding. And when I made my 401k mistake, I lost all that money, and the anxiety of like, I need to get it back. I need it back now. So the fear and the anxiety and just calming down, I think would have saved me so much stress, and mental burden, because I know the foundations, right? I was very intentional about learning how to save and budget and invest early on. And what's interesting about me is that I'm not afraid of the mistakes, even though I don't like making them. I'm not afraid of them because I know I can learn something from it. It's the anxiety of how fast can I learn it. So I would tell myself to calm down because I know what I need to do, right? And most of us know what we need to do. And if we don't know what to do, we know we can learn it. And try to minimize the fear, because fear just gives you stress and sleepless nights. And if you know what to do, then who is fear to tell you that you can't do it? So that's the advice I would give Bola that was on that journey.
Yeah.
I think growing up the way I grew up and seeing my parents struggle, I expect struggle. Struggle is part of life. So there isn't a struggle I've navigated with my finances in my life or in my marriage that I feel like, oh my God, I never expected it, because given my
It's life.
background, I didn't expect it. It's life. It's life, right? And so how do you power through? And obviously having money makes it easier to navigate struggles, right? Because it gives you the opportunity to leverage the money to solve them. So yeah.
So I want you guys to take away from this book when you grab it, because you're going to go grab it. You're going to go to clevergirlfinance.com/books, or you're going to go to Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all the places, and you're going to get your book. And I'm going to tell you the biggest takeaway that you're going to get from this is that you can start from anywhere. We started off this conversation just sharing stories of Bola's dad and his journey, her mom. I talked about my grandfather and or my great grandfather. And the lesson that you're going to learn is that you can start from anywhere. This is possible for anyone if you follow the steps. Yes, there may be setbacks. Yes, you may make mistakes. Yes, you may have to deal with naysayers. You may have to deal with your own mindset. But at the end of the day, the steps are simple and they are plainly laid out in this book for you to follow. And I just really, truly wish everyone would take hold to this and apply it and see the success that they will be able to gain from following these steps and just staying consistent and connected. So, Bola, I'm going to let you in with some parting words. Obviously, this is your platform. I had a little bit of a takeover, but share some parting words that for anyone who's watching this right now, who wants to buy the book, who's on the fence, or who literally knows that this is the start to their journey to becoming a clever girl millionaire.
Yeah, well, thank you for the takeover, Fo. This was so much fun. And for everyone who tuned in, thank you. And I'll just, say this. A lot of times for many of us and how we were raised, wealth was out of reach. We looked at it as something for other people and not for us. But this book, based on my experience, shows you that it is possible to attain that wealth for yourself, regardless of where you are coming from, and to transcend that change generationally, which is what has happened in my family. My parents set the stage. They planted the seeds. I am growing the tree, and I'm going to pass on that tree for my kids to build an orchid, right? Or orchard. So it's very important that you adjust your mindset from that lack perspective of it's not for me, I can't do it, to why not me? Because who are you not to achieve what your heart desires? It's not going to be easy. It's going to be tough because life gets in the way. But once we understand that life is going to get in the way anyway, right? Then it's easier for us to wrap our minds around the fact that we can just simply start taking these steps and readjust and recalibrate every time life gets in the way. Because even if we choose not to build wealth, we choose not to save, we choose to say, woe is me, life is still going to get in the way. It's about how we navigate around the way life gets in the way, or we let it keep us stuck. So it is possible for you. You are not too late. You are, you're on your own unique timeline, and you can build the wealth and have the success you desire for yourself with intention, with focus, and by taking action.
Awesome. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining today's live stream broadcast. And be sure to check out the book. Go to clevergirlfinance.com/book. Get your copy or pre-order your copy. I'm telling you, this is not a book that you want to miss. If you haven't already, I have the other books on my bookshelf here. Go get the other books. Like if you're like, I'm waiting for the book to be released, I haven't gotten it yet. Go get the other books, read those first, apply those things. And this is going to be the perfect segue into Clever Girl Millionaire. So go grab your copy now. All right. We'll talk to you later.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Bo. Bye, everyone.
Bye.